Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today, as always, I'm super excited because I have another amazing guest for you. So my guest today is a coach who challenges your best thinking. He supports his clients with improved awareness, strategy, and accountability. His clients experience a surge in energy, confidence, and productivity. They are inspired by a vision of the future that pulls them forward and allows them to let go of their past that does not serve them anymore. He refuses to buy into your self-imposed limitations you may have accepted. After leaving home at 19, a series of events, including winning a sports bet and being awarded academic scholarships, led to him to travel, live and work in Rome, Helsinki, and England before permanently relocating to the UK in 2008. Since qualifying as a coach in 2016, he has worked with senior leaders in large organizations, the likes of Shell, Oxford Unity Press, Verizon, and helping countless entrepreneurs and SMEs across 10 industries and individuals from a variety of walks of life. He deeply understands the drivers of human behavior, how to overcome fear, self-doubt, and always the ways we may inadvertently self-sabotage. So a very, very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Manuel Giudice.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for the introduction.
You're very welcome. And the surname I may have got horribly wrong, so maybe you might want to repronounce that now, because normally I always ask guests if it's tricky. How do I pronounce your surname? I didn't do that.
Don't worry at all. It is almost impossible to get right, particularly if you're not Italian. It's Giudice.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you for that correction. There's probably some Italians who listen to this now. Say, Paul, come on, do some homework. Next time, this won't be the last conversation we have on My Perfect Failure, so the next one will be a lot better. So Manuel, excited to have this conversation with you. We met, I think, was it last year we met? I think probably back end of 2022, I can't remember.
Towards the latter end of it, I think,
yeah, possibly the latter end. And we had a lovely conversation. I really enjoyed it. I listened, I learned a lot, and I thought, I wonder if he'd come on the podcast. And thankfully you said yes. So thank you for making yourself available today. And just for people listening, we're going to get into Manuel's story a wee bit in a second, but I thought this be a good juncture to give you some insights into what we're going to talk about today. Part of what we're going to talk about, at least, is living into a future by design rather than by default. And I think that is something that I'm super keen to get Manuel's take on and learn how I can maybe get some cues and some tips to be more design orientated rather than things just happen where I just have less control over. But what I was keen to do initially is capture your background or establish your Italian. I was keen to get a sense of that. I know that you're researching you, that your background, your parents had a brick and mortar business, and you learned a lot there. You learned some good stuff, some bad stuff. It'd be lovely to get the essence of what that journey was like for you.
Absolutely, Paul. Thanks for the question. I think that's also helpful because sometimes, particularly my journey wasn't very linear. I've lived in England for 15 years. I'm based in London now. But as you just pointed out, I come from a town in a region in southern Italy called Puglia. Puglia is the heel of the boot for those that visited or go visit there sometimes on holiday. And in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't uncommon for many people and individuals and families to kind of set up and open up businesses. And my family and extended family, we have a fairly large family and cousins. We had a brick and mortar business. Different people were doing different things. But my family specifically, they had a restaurant business and a shoe factory. So you have a series of employees. It's brick and mortar, deafening sounds. And the idea and concept of work-life balance and management and education went quite rooted in that particular part of the country. And so I spent most of my young years or youth there up to my teens. When I was 19, I decided to change things around a little bit. I was always interested in human behavior. It was a sheer curiosity to begin with. So I decided to go to university, and I went to Rome, University of Rome, La Sapienza. And I found when I landed there that my interest initially landed on psychology, and very quickly I realized that very quickly, when I say quickly, it's probably within a couple of years, that I didn't want to become a therapist. And because some of the aspects of it, they didn't quite play to my strengths. So I started experimenting, and with it, a series of circumstances, one of which was winning a scholarship, had me travel and spend some time in Helsinki, and I spent almost 6 months there. And it was a fairly interesting experience. Then when I came back, you might have referred to that in the intro earlier. I won a sports bet when I was in Rome, and I used the savings to come visit the UK, but also take an English summer English school to learn and improve my English. And I loved it here. I really loved the dynamism. I loved the language. I loved the culture. And then after coming back to Italy, a couple of years, maybe even less, I decided to, after traveling in Europe and different places, I decided to travel and to relocate here to England. So I've been here since. So that's physically, I mean, what my journey has been. Professionally, yeah. There have been different things that have intertwined alongside this.
So I've got a couple of questions spring to mind. So your interest in human behavior, do you think that came from your brick and mortar businesses, that seeing people, engaging with people, seeing how different people behave? Where do you think that came from for you?
Yeah, so here is a story. As I was saying, in the 80s and 90s in that part of the country, it was if you were a small business owners, you had to really grapple with some interesting realities. So we had the organized crime, and it's quite typical of the southern part of Italy. Different regions have different types of organized criminal organizations. One of the reasons why that is set up, and I'm not an historian, but my understanding is we always had the southern part of Italy being less industrialized compared to the north. And because you have limited resources, you have more people fighting for those resources. For me, the interest in human psychology is actually, and particularly coaching later on, emerged when I found myself trying to help out in my family's businesses, but also sometimes we had harsh realities with people expecting monetary compensation in exchange for protection. So without going into the much of the detail, that really shaped I saw my parents, so my grandparents and friends having to grow and evolve businesses, those that own businesses, but at the same time under a very high threshold, a high level of stress, stress and anxiety. Yeah. Now, that level of stress and anxiety, I found out, particularly when you have no mental health support or awareness or tools like coaching, consulting, or entrepreneurial accelerator or government support, you kind of are in survival mode. And I saw my parents, my family, lots of the friends that I knew back then that had a business struggling with that. Now, to an extent, that environment has shaped my mindset, how I understood the world, how I understood business. And the values that I was learning through that process, Paul, were effectively very different and almost in contrast with the values that are accepted everywhere else in a fairly healthy environment. I'll give you a couple of examples. So to survive in that type of setting, you have to be almost, you have to act tough. Don't be too open and transparent, and mind your own business, for lack of a better word. I've been very direct. when I first moved to university, Rome at 19, I was sharing with someone yesterday, it was one of the most challenging transitions for me, because the exact opposite of those values was true. So you were expected within a university setting to be open, to be transparent, and to be collaborative. And that shift, although it might seem counterintuitive, made it one of the most difficult transitions of my life when I got started, because everything that I learned to support my family business and I was taking for granted for so many years didn't actually quite apply to a different setting, a different environment. So to me, that is when the mindset journey started, because it's absurd. Even again, as I think back, it feels very strange and unusual even to think in those terms. But how can it possibly be that when you go to university and that's your first year, that's your worst year of your life, when it's, according to other people's opinions and viewpoints, it's one of the best, because you get to explore your people. But to me, it was the unlearning process. Everything that I learned, I had to let go of. And what I found is, as I moved from environment to environment, from going to Helsinki to coming back to, not only from a changing country perspectives, I've since worked with lots of different organizations. Even when I came to the UK, every organizations, every group, every interest group, every association, even religious group, we tend to have a set of mindset, beliefs, and values that we carry with us and we take for granted. And that made me very interested in, so what is it that, what works perfectly well in this environment might not work as well in a different environment. And that led to me pursuing that interest later on, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. It's an interesting one, really, because I think we seldomly think about the idea of, because we develop a set of values, a set of behaviors, we automatically think, as we navigate through life from one place to the next, that these well-trusted behaviors that I've used for a period of time will be perfectly adept and helpful for my next situation, whatever that is. And I don't think that I always like to use myself as an example, but very often I don't think we have the awareness to think, actually, I'm not sure whether that what I was doing in this country or this company is going to be the 100% the right set of behaviors that is going to really take me to that next level. So is there a process of unlearning or becoming more aware?
So this is something that I'm deeply, deeply passionate about. Over the last 15 years, probably, maybe a bit less, I was 25, 13 years, I see myself as a bit of a scientist. I've been experimenting what works, what doesn't, both from my point of view, my perspective, as well as the people that I work with. Initially, a lot of the tools that I've developed over time are things that I tested to see what worked for me. Now, I have to be honest, initially, I had to rely on the output. Now I'm a coach. As a coach, I'm very future oriented. So when you work with a coach, you also come from a place of trying to aspire towards a positive future, maybe achieving goals, becoming more confident, doubling the size of your business or evolving or pivoting your business. The initial part of my journey, and kind of to link it back to your question, was also I had to also seek the help and support of health professionals, because the environment that I was in was quite traumatic. So I had to kind of let go of some deeply seated traumas that I was carrying with me as a result of that environment that I was, that I was immersed in. Now, putting that aside, although I studied psychology and I gained some of the tools that I use here and there to support people, I'm not a therapist. So if someone comes to me that I can't help, I have a network of resources I can point them in the right direction, in a particular type of direction. From a mindset perspective, I think personal change and personal transformation it has to be approached in a way that's very holistic. And there are different elements. I developed a bit of a framework called the bulletproof advantage. Now, this is how I call the framework, and it basically is a high-level framework. So underneath the framework, there's a lot of different types of tools.
Sorry, could you just repeat? Could you just repeat the framework, please?
It's called the bulletproof advantage.
Okay, thank you.
Now, we all know that in life there isn't such a thing as being bulletproof, but I think that was a name that we came up with my mentor, and I think in terms of answering your questions, what I can touch on the different elements of the bulletproof advantage, and then there are tools to underpin it. The underlying principles of the framework is, you mentioned it earlier during the introduction. Number one is awareness of self and awareness of the environment around us. We can't change anything that we do not become aware of. And I think that's a journey that's different for everybody. You could be an entrepreneur, you could be a professional, but that level of awareness is one of the greatest, I think, powerful insights that you might have when you start working with a coach. We tend to, linking it to also the title of the episode, we tend to run almost like a mental script in our daily lives, because the brain is kind of wants us to save energy, wants us to create habits. The problem is that sometimes those habits might become not as helpful over time. So with self-awareness, with having someone that you can have an honest and direct conversation with, which is one of the key principles of coaching, you learn or you become aware of certain behaviors you're bringing into your daily routines, or if you're running a business. I'll give you a specific example. I was working with a client. He's in the import-export business. He had built a business up to 30 employees, very successful business over a period of 15 years. Now, a lot of his behaviors that he had used, or the way he conducted himself to grow this business, were founding on the fact that he was very target-oriented, he was very hard-hitting, and was literally working 15 hours days. Now, because of a combination of factors, the economy changing, the pandemic, Brexit, so his business was affected directly. From a mindset point of view, it really dove into and fell into being in survival mode. The problem is, when you are in survival mode, you tend to try and control every single aspect of your business. Now, my job as a coach is to create a space where I get to help the person become aware of we are in survival mode. One of your core skills and expertise when I was working with him is the fact that he was an incredibly good salesperson. He was really, he loved connecting with people, and he loved talking about this product, because this product is a really good product. But because he had shifted into that survival mindset, he was focusing on trying to control different areas of the business, finance, administration stuff, marketing, sales stuff, which was positioning him outside of his area of genius, which is connecting with clients and selling and then building and evolving the business. So I'm mentioning that example because then when we started working together, we wanted to shift his mindset from survival to creation. And the way we do that, the first point is always create awareness around our own behaviors and our own mindset and how they determine the results that we're getting. So we brought in a couple of resources, PAs initially. We had to try different PAs, and we brought in marketing specialists and other people that allowed him to step away and start looking at the future in a way that it was more relaxed. He made the shift. Things are not perfect, but he made a substantial improvement. And even from a revenue generation perspective, I had a call back a month later and said, look, I have three more revenue opportunities. And I feel a lot more relaxed. I feel a lot more in control. So the interventions, the first step, I would say, that underpins the framework I was talking about was self-awareness. And sometimes it's hard to learn and do it for ourselves. We just need someone that we have a good intimate partnership with that can bring that up. And that's one element of coaching. Yeah. So that's one aspect of it. I can talk about the other ones unless you want to dive in.
No. It'd be lovely to cascade into the other area, and then I'll sort of dig in with a question.
Yeah. So self-awareness is the first element of it. The second element of it is action. So action, for certain people, individuals are different. We're all different. But action, at times, when we want to change, if you are entrepreneurial, you might be overly action oriented. You might be involved in all sorts of different activities. You try to deliver a lot of different outcomes. Sometimes action also means that we need to have someone that holds us accountable. To me, when I say action, I also mean accountability. Now, the people that I tend to work with, that tend to be very entrepreneurial, very action-oriented, I have to do the opposite of holding them accountable. I have to create a space for them to slow down. I had a coach a few years ago that said to me, his name is Daniel, and he said to me, Manuel, you remind me of a puppy. And I said, and I couldn't quite understand it initially. I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, it's like a puppy in a kitchen floor. You're trying, and it's a slippery floor. You're trying to go 100 miles per hour.
Yeah. You're
getting exhausted, but you're not going anywhere. You're not moving. You're not making any progress. And when it comes to action is by becoming self-aware of the fact that these are our strengths. And in order to translate those insights that you gain by working with a coach into action, you need to become aware of whether you need to slow down or speed up. Speed up means accountability. There are different types of coaches that I work with. They do accountability coaching, or coaches that I know, which is hold people accountable to take action between sessions. My approach is more insight-based. When I work with a person who's quite entrepreneurial, they tend to take too much action. And I have to find the perfect balance for them to translate action to progress. And oftentimes, translating action to progress means having to take time off for yourself, self-care. As an entrepreneur, if you're delivering on different aspects of your business, if your view is not wide enough, you tend to transmit or almost exude your emotional state, could be anxiety, stress, to your team. The problem is once you do that, you might land into making decisions or put necessary pressure that will cause your team to kind of be affected negatively by your state of mind as a leader. So going from awareness to action is an important step, but it also has to be highly individualized. And my job as a coach is to understand whether, I'm not doing this because it's outside of my comfort zone, therefore I need to hold them accountable to take the action, or we just need to slow down so that the action you're currently taking, we improve the quality of how you turn up and show up in your conversation. And it's my job to understand what is the right space that will actually help you, my client, to actually make progress in that particular direction. I've had several conversations around this quickly, and I'm trying to think of a specific example to really bring this to life. And I'm working with this really fantastic owner of a marketing agency. She's a really inspiring leader. She has a team, I think, of 40 people, and she built a business from scratch. And she's extremely resourceful. She's extremely determined. She works long hours. She's been historically very hard hitting. But one of the things that really plays very deeply to her strength is the fact that she published a book. And the book that she published is not a business book. It's a book about friendship and timeless values. What inspires me about her is that her leadership style is not only hard hitting, she's also very connected. She was able to strike a very healthy balance, or she's working on striking a very healthy balance of delivering for the business, as well as staying authentic to herself and to her ways that can be gentle, that can be a lot more gentle. Now, one of the things that we have to work on is sometimes the environment we immerse ourselves in tend to shape how we show up in the world. For her point of view, because she's involved in many different projects and activities that she's conducting at the same time, the biggest insight is for her to take time to slow down and create a schedule. When we work together, we created a schedule that will be protected time, but we will protect also resting time. Because the moment we slow down, we're effectively speeding up. Because the quality of our conversations, the quality of the people we bring into our business, the partners that we surround ourselves by are increasing. And she's going through this process of transformation. We met again recently, but you can see energetically the sheer fact that she's becoming aware that she needs to slow down, which is her action, her accountability, is actually feeding positively into how she leads a business. She's bringing in different resources, and now she's working on a passion project, which is bringing to life her book, turning into a musical. So to me, awareness is what we started from, and then action, and action can translate into accountability, and accountability could be we need to be doing more of, and then or the opposite of that, which is we need to slow down and create a space for us to become more effective in the things that we're doing. So that's the second. That's the second step.
No, it's really interesting. Almost sounds. I love what you've described. It almost sounds a little bit counterintuitive, like slow down to speed up. And I would imagine, I'm guessing here, when you're speaking with clients, particularly entrepreneurs, people who've got important roles that are very busy, there is this sense of, I guess, ideology or thinking that we always have to be 100 miles an hour. We always have to be in the mire of what's at the epicenter of what's going on, doing this, doing that, making phone calls, sending emails, virtual calls, in-person calls, everything that goes into that idea of being busy. But I get that analogy. Sometimes when we do that, I know that from my perspective, sometimes I've got so many things in my head that actually, how productive can I be when I've got all these competing thoughts in my head, and it's difficult to isolate what's the most important. Or indeed, I think some of the work you do with your clients, where you unlock their passion pieces, what is it? You referenced a client earlier that you're working with, that his area of love and growth for him is, I think it might have been a creative element. And when you're starting to do the business, you try and take on everything, and some of those areas may be things actually not quite the areas that you love and you enjoy, and maybe you might have other resources within your team, or you can go and get other resources that will do maybe a better job than you, that will allow you to do a better job in your area that you love.
I love what you're just describing, and exactly what you said in terms of this is a very common challenge for many business owners and people that are entrepreneurial, but even people that are in business within an organization are intrapreneurial. They're trying to lead different projects. They're trying to have a bit of an impact. It's very common among most people. But I think, Paul, you touched on a point that was really the core of it, which is energy. I'm verbalizing it in different ways. So one of my job and one of my responsibility as within organization, it's usually referred to, you've got to play to your own strengths. Now, that's not always possible and not always realistic. But oftentimes you find is that another analogy that I like using is like you have a fantastic car. I'm not a car person, although I come from my family, they're all passionate about cars. But let's say you have a really beautiful car, and I don't know, BMW or Mercedes, whatever it is people like, and it's fantastic. However, and you are about to set off on a journey. You're going to, I don't know, Paris or Liverpool, whatever it is people do, right? And the car is amazing, but unless you have the petrol that actually sustains your effort over a period of time, it's not going to get there. So you have all the elements in place in terms of skills, in terms of mindset, in terms of experience, in terms of qualification, in terms of a track record of success. What most people struggle with, particularly entrepreneurial people, is to really reconnect with what energizes them. Now, there are different aspects to it, but to me, one of the core aspect is once we play outside of position for too long without realizing it, then our energy is deeply affected. And it is different from person to person. So as a coach is creating a level of I sense and I understand what energizes them. Usually we have an initial conversation, and I have a lot of tools to kind of uncover what energizes different people, as well as connecting personally and deeply. Then once we create a tiny habit where we can start refueling what our interest in, For example, I'll give another example. I was working, was introduced to this lawyer. She's also, for example, we can apply creativity to any fact, to any sector. We don't have to become artists around it. But one of the things that transpired from our first couple of sessions was the fact that whenever she was a lawyer, very successful, she was doing really well, and she enjoyed it. But then at some point, she brought up about a personal interest in creativity, and she also was a painter and a dancer. Now, energetically, the way she expresses herself and the way she talks about, it's almost like wasn't even a side project. It was an activity she does to energize herself. You could see their physiology had completely changed, and we can all take habits or mini rituals or things that tend to energize us and embed them into different aspects of our lives. It doesn't necessarily mean having to build a business and transform your business. It oftentimes also the career we fall under or that we decide to join, they play to our strengths to a certain extent, but we do not. Sometimes we lose track of what energizes us about those particular careers that can keep us even more energized to lead even different and more projects. So energy to me is an important aspect of that.
Just a question around that. I think it's linked. So I was thinking for anybody listening that sometimes can we have outdated, I guess, paradigms, or I'm not sure paradigms is the right word, but outdated behaviors. So what I mean by that is that we might come from a culture or environment where we existed this way, and then when we're trying to, as we're evolving in life, we get a new job, we move to a new town, and we do something different that just don't have the awareness that things have changed, and we go almost blindly into that next situation, totally unaware, maybe totally unprepared for the skill sets and the behavior that you need to really embrace what lies ahead.
Are you referring, is it a professional context or a personal context?
I guess it could be for any context. It's maybe the ideology about that evolution of change that can happen in our lives. And because I love what you do, because you help your clients become aware. Because I do think, and I have no expertise here, but I do think that probably is an epidemic where our awareness can be slightly turned off. Our awareness button can be turned off. And if our awareness button's turned off, then our action button is almost skewed in terms of how we're going to act if we don't have any awareness. And I'm thinking that as we navigate through life at different junctures and our life does change, it could be fundamentally from a career perspective. We might have been in a career for 5 years or a company for 5 years, then we're going to a different company. They operate a little bit differently, but we don't think about that. Really, we just think about, wonderful, I've got a new job and they've looked at my background and I've gone through the interview process. Or it could be like in your example where you've got this ability to navigate and move different countries. And I'm just wondering, from an ideological perspective, should people listening now, are there ways that they can maybe tap into becoming more aware of how maybe they can make little decisions that are really going to impact how they're able to navigate successfully the situation?
I love your question. I think I just want to reframe it first, is because it is true. I had a lot of the changes that happened during my first life, the first part of my life and professional career, they weren't planned. They were almost forcefully happened. People can change. Unfortunately, we tend to have two types of approaches to how we change. We change out of desperation, which was unfortunately unfortunately or fortunately, to be honest, now in hindsight, the first part of my personal and professional career, which is the situation is too painful for me to be in it. So it's not highly recommended to change just because we are about to crash against the wall, just because we are about to hit a crisis. So that was that defined most of my earlier years of my life. Because when I changed, when I left home, it wasn't a necessarily very healthy setting for me to be in. So I moved on to the next, and I didn't quite feel like that was completely aligned to who I was. And initially, during the first part of my professional life, but also personal life, was out of desperation, let's say. Now things have changed, and this is also one of the reasons why I decided to pursue to learn about professional development, where I first came to the UK in 2008. Is that actually everything that happens to us, that we think happens to us, we can actually start approaching life in a way that we don't have to change out of desperation. We don't have to wait for the next crisis to hit. We can actually get creative, and we can change out of inspiration. Now, having said that, I myself have my own coaches and mentors. I myself, I'm human. I myself tend to, I have people sometimes to hold me accountable. Sometimes I have to ask. I surround myself with people that are kind and caring enough to hold me accountable, but also be honest. Doesn't mean that they're right or that I'm right, but they are almost raising the bar because I've made a commitment, and they actually are open to tell me what it is that in their point of view, I'm not actually following through with. I'm not honest. So coaching is a fantastic tool for that. When it comes to awareness, what I think is it might be helpful for people and the listeners is around comfort is a really big problem. And I see it on myself, right? I see it coming from a place of almost having to move around a lot because I wasn't satisfied to go in a place where I want to get creative. Comfort is a great problem because there is this beautiful insight that I gained from an author called Stephen Kotler. I think it was Stephen Kotler talked about the 4% rule. And 4% is the idea that we, as much as we can, if we want to escape the trap of comfort, which is what actually, a fairly good and healthy society, a comfortable society, particularly here in the Western Europe, has created for us over the last 20, 30 years. But comfort is actually one of the things that causes us to fall into the compliance of things. The 4% rule says that if you really want to grow in a particular area, be it a business, personally, relationship, you need to make sure that within your timetable, within your schedule, within how you plan your weeks and months, you build in enough challenge. And the domain is relatively relevant depending on what your goal is, but your current challenge has to be 4% higher than your current skill level.
Really? Okay, that's interesting.
If it's above 4%, we feel overwhelmed, demotivated, and we will not follow through. We tend to kind of become defensive. If it's less if it's not even between 0 and 1, if it's not even less than 0%, let's say it's a negative, then we are complacent. However, if we operate in a space of 4%, 0 to 4%, that's where we call it flow. And that level of improvement, and my job as a coach is to bring people to always keep them within that 4%. You find out that the 1% improvement in a domain each day over a 70-day period, you are twice as good. You look back, and I think about, for your audiences, if you were to think about a particular skill, I always think about driving, or acquiring a particular skill. It could be public speaking, dancing, that we today take for granted. But a year ago was really, really difficult or challenging, or even less than a year ago.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So
and that's the principle.
Yeah. No, I love that analogy. Thank you for sharing that. Something that I wasn't familiar with. Is it Stephen Kotler, did you say?
I think it's Stephen Kotler.
Okay, I'll research that and I might reference that in the show notes. But I love that analogy, and it gets me thinking about the theme of this particular episode around living into our future by design and not by default. And I guess that might be a strategy that people can use to shift themselves from the comfort zone, because I think the comfort zone that word comfort, people think, well, this feels nice. I'm settled. I don't have to push myself. I don't feel anxious. I don't feel any resistance. Let's settle here. But ultimately, deep down, I guess we're veering into that default life and not the life that potentially we really want and resonate with. Do you have any thoughts around that?
I think the biggest insight I had a few years ago, I joined an entrepreneurial accelerator in London. And one of the things that stood with me, and I found it to be particularly true, and that's what I try and do with my clients, is they say the environment dictates performance. So environment dictates performance. Now, the way that translates within my world, and hopefully that could be helpful for your audiences as well, is I think a month or so ago, I published I do write, I have a newsletter, and some of my insights and views were picked up by The Guardian, the national newspaper here. And one of the things that they found particularly helpful was the concept of having an energy audit.
Okay.
An energy audit looks at different aspects and areas of your life, and it helps you to become aware of whether those aspects and areas of your life are energizing you or are draining you of energy. And the environment we are immersing on a regular basis can actually help us raise the bar for us to push ourselves to step outside of the comfort zone, or might reinforce the comfort zone. And what I try to do when we work with clients, sometimes I do sessions to give us a really practical example. Yesterday with a client, we were in Regent's Park. So we meet in different places, and depending on what my clients need, I choose locations that will energize us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the moment we create, we immerse ourselves in an environment and an habitat. When I say environment, I don't only mean physical environment. A mindset is an environment. It could be a physical environment. It could be a work environment. It could be our habitual conversations. It could be a project that we work on that doesn't quite play to our strength. So I'm happy to share the tool with you. I think there's and the link of what was picked up in the link.
That'd be lovely, brilliant.
And the environment we immerse ourselves in is either an environment that energizes us and holds us accountable, or is an environment that is overly comfort. And the problem with that is we do not become aware of it. So we have to, the enemy here is the comfort, being in the comfort zone. And environment matters a lot. Some people have mentors, some people have coaches, some people go and join entrepreneurial accelerators, some people have family environment setting, they're close to the gym, there are people that hold them accountable, maybe an informal set of support. But the environment, our habitual environment, has a huge impact on whether we are able to come up with ideas so that we want to live by design, not by default. But the environment is one of the key aspects to look at first, because it's either supporting us pursuing, achieving, or trying to fulfill a vision, or is actually taking energy away from it.
So I was thinking about people that are listening to this, that are really tuned in to maybe questioning their own situations as they listen to this. So if on the proviso that they are, how can they maybe gauge whether their energy is off and their energy is on, if that makes sense, that question? Or maybe there's a case of being honest with ourselves, because I think sometimes deep down, intuitively, we kind of know.
So there is I'll share an anecdote to try and address that question. I spent a bit of time in the Bhaktivedanta Manor. The Bhaktivedanta Manor is a Hindu temple in North London, and I spent was it 11 to 12 weeks. I would go there regularly. I wouldn't live there, but I would go there regularly. That happened last year. And before then, I spent quite a bit of time at the London Buddhist Center in London, and I was intrigued about not necessarily the yoga and the meditation practices, but what were the underpinning principle underneath those. One of the really great insight that one of the monks, I think, if I remember correctly, shared with me was, think of life as a like a bird. A bird has two wings. And I'm not a religious person, so I was trying to take it all on, be inquisitive and ask questions. So I didn't know where he was trying to go with it. And I said, one wing is self-effort. The other wing is grace. Grace is idiosyncrasies. Once we deploy self-effort, then somehow people say the universe kind of matches up to support you in what your next step should be. And there will never be any change without self-effort. So for me, to kind of, there has to be an element of personal responsibility, and there is an area of a life that I'm not satisfied and happy with, that I want to make a change. It's an individual win. No one can force you on it. Sometimes we fall into visions which we've acquired because we've been exposed to environments. It could be a company vision, a family vision, or an institution. And this is absolutely fine if I believe in that vision and if this is something that aligns to my values. But in some cases, I don't want to live into someone else's vision. Yeah, so I know, and if I live into someone else's vision, I'm almost negating my own nature. I love doing X. I love dancing. I love pursuing this career. So there is, I really challenge everyone to kind of do some self-reflection and see what was the last time over the last, let's say, 6 months or 12 months where I felt truly alive, very inspired. I felt happy, I felt joyful, I felt connected. And why don't I live in that space more often? What we find is that the condition that led us to that event could actually be created by design with a little bit of conscious effort. But ultimately, it comes down to taking personal responsibility, and the fact that that I don't want to live into someone else's vision. I want my life to be different. And today we have many more tools than we've ever had cumulatively. I mean, for example, I speak to people in southern Italy. This personal development, professional development, and the internet, all these tools weren't accessible to them. Now we do have them, but we need to take the responsibility to lean outside of our comfort zone and try to come up with our own visions. And we can do it in ways that is achievable. We don't have to, break ourselves. But ultimately, if we are honest with ourselves, if we tune into our own inner wisdom and intuition, we know what is the direction of travel we should be going to. We just oftentimes do not get ourselves organized or get a mentor or a coach, or we do not commit to actually doing the steps that actually in a year time, we might literally be in a completely different place, maybe a different career, different business, or how we run and lead our businesses, or maybe we publish the book, whatever that might be. But again, it's an individual responsibility of really tapping into what it is that actually energizes you. How can I fuel this fire that is already in there?
Really interesting stuff that you've revealed there. And that, as you were talking, I was thinking around that ability, that the challenge of us maybe living somebody else's vision, tapping into somebody else's vision, and that being the norm because we don't have the awareness to really, because we haven't done that reflection around what really radiates us, energizes us. And that's scary to me that that can be our reality. And I think I would maybe hazard a guess and say it's more of as the world becomes more global with social media and stuff like that, with different areas that we can dig into what other people are doing. And obviously we've got our immediate friends and family and whatnot, work colleagues. Has it become more, are we more vulnerable now to maybe often into somebody else's reality in terms of what their vision is, and maybe losing sight of actually what really radiates us?
So my answer could be a little bit counterintuitive, a bit more practical. I had I love, one of my passions is reading about spirituality and spiritual books. From a practical perspective, what does it mean in practice? And one of the things that I learned recently was that transformation doesn't happen from a there is always two elements to change an area of life. There is the intellectual kind of the mindset type of level, and there is the embodied experience type of level. We might have the right distinctions and the right mindset, or we might become aware of the right mindset, but a lot of the work has to be also done physiologically. So unless, because the body carries a lot of this memory, it's like when we feel lethargic, we know we should be doing what we feel lethargic. So to me, when it comes to, depending what the stages of, we can buy, and I completely agree with you. There are so many visions out there we could be bought into. The way I would go about it is to almost take the pressure off ourselves. Instead of having a grand vision for ourselves, become curious and very practical. In the next 2 to 3 weeks, what can I do to really snap out on my habitual environment and try a few things, try a few activities. When I first came to England a few years after I came, I didn't live in London back then, but I learned about, for example, improvised comedy. Now, I didn't even know what it was back then, but it was a very different environment that I'd never been exposed to. I was literally curious about what it would be like to be on stage without a script, having to come up with a story with actors and other people like myself that were trying to learn it. That environment almost was, it gave me an insight of other opportunity and the possibilities. And that led to me doing public speaking, and that led me to doing different things. So curiosity and the fact there was a physically embodied experience got me to experiment different things. And the more I found, in order to, I don't think we can have a vision for our life upfront. The vision can change over time, but we have to come to a vision from a place of momentum, right? So we look back, I've done X, Y, and Z. I'm interested, let me try this. And at some point, the more you are in momentum, the more your vision becomes more refined. I never, as I shared with you earlier, I never knew that coaching was even a thing for most of my life. But what have I found is that a lot of that insight that I had and my communication style experience I've had, it's actually a valuable tool that I can, and also entrepreneurship, right? All of the things that I learned as a child or as a young person within that environment is really rooted in entrepreneurship. I can use those tools now in hindsight to build a vision of trying to help people live into a more fulfilled and a future, fulfilled and meaningful life and a future by default. No, but that's not the beginning. The vision wasn't set up to begin with. So I would say, yes, there is a huge risk, to answer your question, into buying into someone else's vision, but we can also make our process fun to find out what it is that our vision could be. What if over the next 6 to 8 weeks, I went ahead and experimented with different aspects. I might be a creative person. It might be something that I might immerse myself in an environment initially. It could feel a little bit intimidating. It could be dancing. It could be painting, or I might pursue an interest. And once I might find myself in an environment where I don't know anyone, people think drastically different than I do. On reflection, looking back, you might find out that level of curiosity might lead you to pursue the next step. And I think visions are built, particularly when you take responsibility as an individual, by taking actions, consistent actions. You can do it. I mean, people can do it by themselves. They don't have to hire a coach. But then eventually the dots will connect. And the act of physically moving, the act of getting ourselves out there. Some people hate networking. In my experience, I did a test once. According to some, the standards, I'm an introverted. But the reality is, I also love connecting with people. Yeah. But if I had listened to all the pre-templated scripts of what you're like, then you don't actually get to have a direct experience. And unless we embody the experience of getting ourselves out there, we run the risk, I see that sometimes in large organizations, to buy into a vision that is quite intangible. And it can be practical. It could be something, in the next 6 months, let me experiment. Let me choose to get involved in different activities with different people and see where we can go from there. And then that steps usually lead to following steps, because we will learn through the process and along the way.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. I love the idea about that consistent action. And once we've decided we're going to do something, we just need to trust the process and just do it, as opposed to not trusting the process.
And 100%, and that's where mindset kicks in.
Yeah.
And that's where the two elements of the methodology I mentioned earlier kick in. One is awareness, the other one was accountability. When we want to try and do something new, unless we stick to it, unless we are committed for a certain period of time, we are basically breaking out of a series of habits of energetic level. We might feel lethargic. And that's where accountability works. And accountability, you can have someone that you can meet. It could be a circle of friends, it could be family, it could be someone else that you feel that will hold you accountable. Because depending on what your initial momentum is to go in a different direction, requires a certain amount of conscious will and commitment. And the problem with that is mindset is really important. I'll give you a specific example. I'm also conscious of the time, but one of the biggest challenge a lot of the people that I work with face when taking the business, let's say, to the next level, or try to change career, or maybe get into the dating world, is the concept of perfectionism.
Yeah.
Right. Perfectionism. Once I had an entrepreneur called Daniel challenging me, saying, "You're trying to be perfectionist, but perfectionism is protectionism." And I said, "What do you mean?" But I knew what he meant eventually, but he landed in a way that challenged my thinking, my way of looking at it. I build myself, and I bring it with my clients, and I do that regularly. We tend to try overemphasize trying to control every single aspect of our lives because it gives us a sense of reassurance. The problem is that too much control, or the desire to too much control, lead us to us wanting to be perfect in everything we do. And perfection is the enemy of progress. Like you said, with the world changing so fast, that mindset shift of, one of the things that I said to this particular person not long ago is, go in, dive in, make a commitment, an open commitment when you are 70% ready.
Okay.
You don't have all the answer. You are 70% ready. Most of us will wait until we are 85 to 90, 95, or even 100% ready. And then that leads to procrastination. By getting unconfident, that leads to the 4% we're talking about earlier. When we commit to something, a project, an idea, a particular action, a date, or a hobby, and when we are 60 to 70% ready, then that level of commitment will help us break through the complacency that we might have built into our environment, because we have to do it. And what we find throughout that process of committing, then it's fun. We learn from it. It's satisfying, and it naturally leads to the next process. But unless mindset like perfection is equal protectionism, or it's one of the mindset insights. And sometimes when we try and do something new, we need to stay at it for long enough. Sometimes it's about the numbers. So that's another insight, right? So there is a lot of different insights that come into place. And sometimes we feel, I'm not good at it. And that's the power of coaching, for example. We all, in my view, and I borrow someone else's analogy on this, we're all standing in our lives. We've all done lots of things, career-wise, personally. So we're all standing on a mountain of value. We just don't recognize what we've done up to now because we don't take the time to reflect. And once we reflect, I've been leading people all my life. I might have not done it formally within a particular context, but that's not something that I'm just starting now. And that's one of the challenges that I see many people bring when we have a conversation. We don't realize of the power we're sitting in. And the moment we realize that gives us the confidence to, I'm going to go for it, even when I'm 70% ready. Yeah. And the third element we didn't touch on afterwards was awareness and accountability, action. And then there is the mindset. The mindset is our belief system tend to become like a limiting for us. And having an environment, a person, or a group that actually challenges actively, we tend to try and avoid people that challenge our thinking because we feel awkward. The reality is we need people that are caring and open enough to challenge our thinking, because that's how we can lead to a next level of progress, of fulfillment, or career satisfaction, whichever that might be.
lots to think about and chew on there. But there's lots of opportunity for us to evolve and to live our life by design. I really do feel that, working with you, coaches like you, people that can give us that accountability, just that clarity, so we're able to just to be more perceptive about about what we want out of life, about how we go about doing that. Well, potentially we might have people in our community that can support us. So getting towards the end now, what I was keen to ask you is, where's the best way for people to contact you? Obviously, possibly people want to work with you. I know you've got a wonderful LinkedIn page where you have got articles that people can access. So where's the best place to start?
I have a website, so manuelgiudice.com. And LinkedIn also I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I write a weekly newsletter called One Step Forward. And if happy to connect on LinkedIn, and then you probably get an automated invitation to the newsletter. And I try to bring ideas and thoughts that are practical, thought-provoking, and helpful at the same time. And I try to challenge people thinking in a way that's always respectful, obviously. But I think there is a lot of opportunity for everyone now to really tap into our intuition, build our energy, and start experimenting with what's available in current times. So that's what I try and do through the newsletter. And it's called One Step Forward. The best way probably is LinkedIn, Manuel Giudice. You will find me there, the website. I'm also active on all the socials, but probably LinkedIn and my website are the best go-to as I evolve the other socials as well.
Okay, lovely. So I'll put all those on the show notes. And you do have a wonderful LinkedIn. So your articles are wonderful. I've been reading your articles, so they are wonderful. And what's important to me, thought-provoking and make you think differently to sort of that sort of tunnel vision that sometimes we can have during the course of our week. And so we have a recurring question on the podcast. The recurring question is, if you could invite 3 inspirational people for dinner, who might you invite? And they can be alive or they can be past. So you kind of really have full range on that.
Yes. I love your question. And I watched a couple of your previous episodes, so I was prepared.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. Somebody asked me last year and I didn't know where to go with it. So I should prompt people as much as I can, because it's a bit of a tricky one.
I had to think hard, but I think I've got my answer. And it's also quite counterintuitive. I'd be really curious to have in the same room Michael A. Singer.
Okay, yeah.
He's a yogi turned billionaire turned yogi, and is leading his spirituality in the West, some people say.
Yeah.
And I also have a comedian, Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, I love Ricky Gervais. He's a good one, yeah.
I'll be interested. I'll see them next to one another to see what happens. And the third person is a bit of an unusual one. I don't know why I chose that, but Tom Cruise. Okay. I'm a big fan of he has an incredible body awareness, and the stance and what he does. I'm not physically active. I'm not a sports extreme person, but I really appreciate his level of body physical awareness and how it brings his conviction and passion, even considering his background was very different. So these are three different people. I've been thinking is what would it be like to be
that would be interesting. I would love to see that. That would be brilliant. I wish I could make one of these happen. Maybe I need to manifest one that actually happens. That would be amazing. So one question that I meant to ask at the top of the show, and I forgot to do that, was the sports bet. What was the sports bet? Can you reveal that?
Football. It was Italian football.
Okay.
It was, as I said, I wanted to become as I was in southern Italy. One of the things that I'd go to that had really helped me keep things focused and clear was football. So I joined a football team called Tricase. It was in Serie C, so it was a professional football team, but I was in the youth team. Yeah, I was in the youth team. I was very young, so I didn't play. And sorry, I'm trying to connect it to what the question that you just mentioned around football. Then for many years, I played in the football, so I knew I was following football very closely. I used to be an AC Milan supporter. But then I left it as I was growing. The team went bankrupt. Things didn't work quite well. And so I left it for a couple of years. When I landed in Rome, I never played sports bets before. But I think I played 3 bets in total, and I won 2 bets. bets. And the one that you're referring to that I probably mentioned on the website is the 1,125 euros or something that I used then to pay for the
amazing.
English summer school. But yeah, it was culture or football.
Okay, lovely. Manuel, amazing. Really enjoyed our discussion. Learned heaps, and yeah, you've given me lots to ponder and think about for the rest of my day, which I will be doing. And I know that we will have more conversations. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for the questions, and thank you we went to different places and really enjoyed the questions, and it really got me thinking and revisited some of those experiences, which is quite helpful and also an insight for me.
Yeah, but it's brilliant for me, and I'm sure everybody that's listened, I think everybody will be pondering and taking cues, and everyone will take different things away and write different things down and make that their point of action, and we will get inspired differently. And I think even when you listen to these things multiple times, there's things you miss. Actually, I missed that. I'm going to go and do that now. So thank you. And I look forward to more discussions with you.
100%, Paul.
Okay.
Wish you a fantastic rest of the weekend.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of My Perfect Failure. We're always looking to grow the show. So please do share this episode far and wide. If you know anybody that is keen to evolve their life and live it more by design, less by default, please do share this episode. And your feedback is most welcome. We're keen to hear about the things you like and equally the things you don't like. So you can contact me at paul@myperfectfailure.com, or you can contact me via the website, the contact page. So until the next time, take care for now.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.